Okay, welcome y'all. We're on the 15th day of the month, holy month of Adar, first Adar, 5776. You got it right. It is the what we call Shushan Purim Katan, and it's called the small Purim. But as we know in life, the small things, those are the top. You think about it, we get up in the morning and we say these blessings, oh thank you for seeing. I mean, like, give me a break. I got more important things to think about than my eyesight or being able to stand up or be able to move. If you think about it, we don't have anything more important than our eyes. As they say in the world, you got your health, you got everything. You don't have your health, nothing's going to help you. So it's those little things. And when a person makes a little change, it's not a little change. For a person to move themselves, him or herself, to make a change in our times, it's a tremendous thing. So something small, a small movement, makes a tremendous impact. I tell you, in the world of exercise, it's really amazing. You could be doing exercises for years. You change the angle of your exercise. Believe me, baby, tomorrow you feel it. I don't understand. I moved my arm, I moved my leg, I moved my positioning, my back, 1 millimeter. That's right. But a small change, you're going to feel it. It's a whole different muscle. It's a whole different area of the body here. Okay, so that's the idea here. Don't feel a person that makes a small change, a person that it progresses, a person that takes a step in the right direction, even though it's a small step. Don't think, I didn't do anything. You did great. It's a great. So that's the idea behind the small Purim Katan. So this is today a day of tremendous celebration, and in the spirit of what I call Purim Torah, I'm going to start out. As you know, I don't have my tefillin on, and there's a reason for that. We're going to do a little bit of Purim Torah, because situation here in the Holy Land is such a tragedy that if it wasn't tragic, and if it wasn't sad, and it wasn't a nightmare, it would actually be Purim Torah. It would be pretty funny. So, with your permission here, fasten your seatbelts. A little bit of Purim Torah today as we're on the small Purim. Okay, here's the first Purim Torah. The head of the army, the chief of staff, his first name happens to be God. Now, if I had to give him a name, if you had to give him a name, you know what I'm saying? This is the name. His name is God. So we have for the first, okay, now God made a statement. We'll call him God, the holy. He makes a statement, that we in the army, we don't go according to, we don't maneuver, we don't run the army according to slogans. What's the slogan? Slogan happens to be, something out of the Talmud. Something has to be Jewish law, He must think it's a slogan by, people put together, coined the slogan. So we don't go in the army, we don't just go by the slogan of someone that comes to kill you, kill them first. So I can't, there was these one or two girls that were 13 or 14 years old, and they went with scissors that they bought somewhere. I just can't give an order for people to empty their magazines on a 13-year-old with a scissors. Famous saying. Okay, now you have, God is speaking here. So you have the choir. Okay, you have the choir. La 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 la. Who's in the choir? They have all the people that are being paid. All the people that are paid to say, oh yes, the yes men, the yes women, the yes man. So it's just great. We have the boogeyman. Man, I don't know where that guy's coming from. His name is Boogie. I know where I'm from. Boogie is like a, Casey and the Sunshine Band. That's the boogeyman. I used to have a shirt, I'm your boogeyman. So, the choir, okay. Oh, God has spoken. We're behind God. Okay, choir, la 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 la, let's go. The choir is sung. And then there's that Ben Yet, Niet, Niet, Ben Yet. Okay, Ben Yet, Niet, Niet, Niekobaj, Niet. Oh my God, there's a new, remember the slogan? Oh, there's something new happening in the not so Jewish party. There's something new happening. Ben Niet, Niet, nothing new here. And the choir sings, we're behind you, God. Oh, that's a great statement. We're with you, God. Oh, and the choir is sung, folks. Oh, and there's a great, if it's not enough. Okay, so here's how it runs. Okay, I brought today, you got it here. I brought my scissors over here. Okay, I got my scissors, God. God, I got my scissors over here. So here's how it goes, okay? Let's imagine someone's coming at me with the scissors. Okay, I'm calling a timeout. 1 second, gal. Okay, now, 1 second. There's a 13-year-old. 1 second. How do I know how old you are? Can you give me your identity card or something? Driver's license? Well, watch that. Watch that nut. Watch that scissors. 1 second. I need to know how old you are. God has spoken. We cannot do anything to, we can't just, kill you. 1 second. Can you prove your age? I really want to know if I could do something to you. Whoa, yeah. 1 second. Okay, you can't prove your age. Okay, 1 second. I see, you're a girl, but maybe you're not. Do you know Bruce Jenner? Do you know Bruce Jenner? 1 second. Maybe you're one of those trans. 1 second. You're a girl, but maybe you're really a guy, and then I could empty my magazine out on you. I don't know really. 1 second. Watch that. Watch that. Scissors. You don't know Bruce Jenner? Okay, 1 second here. Now, I have to check the scissors out. There's different shitas. There's different, in Jewish law, there's different. How big is a scissors? There's the shita of the Chazon Ish, and there's the shita of the Grachnayim. Now I want to check that scissors out. 1 second. Can you just, excuse me, young lady, can you just give me that scissors bit? I want to check it out. Is it dangerous enough to do anything? What kind of scissors is that? Can you tell me the brand of the scissors? There's the Swiss, those can kill you. 1 second, where'd you get that scissors from? What is that, a plastic? Is that a joke? Oh my God. 1 second here. 1 second over here. Okay, 1 second. We don't know your age. We don't. 13. We don't know. Okay, 1 second here. Let me just think about it over more. Let me look at my, Kate, it says here the questions that I have to ask you over here. Can I just check your muscles, please? I want to see, say how really, how you can stab me. Can you just roll up your sleeve, please? Can you roll, it's not modest, right? It's not modest. No, I can't check your muscles either. Okay. Whoa, I don't know. God. Oh my God. Okay, there we go. As I said, if it wasn't tragic, it would actually be kind of funny. We have in Israel a very interesting phenomena. In the world, there are 171 armies. Do you have any idea how many armies out of the 171 are not called armies, are called defense forces? They asked once Rabbi Kahana, they said, Rabbi Kahana, why'd you call it the Jewish Defense League? So he has a funny answer. He said, I had enough trouble defending the Jewish Defense League. What if I would have called it the Jewish Offensive League? You know, that would have been pretty offensive. So that's the funny joke. So how many, according to your opinion out there, how many of the 171 armies are called the Defense Forces? Well, I checked it out. And lo and behold, there's only 7 out of 171. Some of them are a place called Swaziland. Yes, Swaziland Defense Forces. And there's the Lesotho Defense Forces. And there's the Japan self-defense, not defense, but must be like Bruce Lee or something. Self-defense. You know those Japanese Bruce Lee. 7 out of 171. Israel Defense Forces. Oh, that's interesting. They don't even call it an army. It's not even called an army. Interesting. Oh, and there's a new one. Folks, if this isn't great, Purim Torah. If it's not enough, they have this new expression. They have, after every attack, they say the attacker was neutralized. Neutralized? What is that? I mean, I know that when you have cats or dogs, you have to neuter them. I don't know, is that saying kind of, is that they were neutralized, they can't have any more kids anymore? What does it mean? You put your car into neutral, but it's still kind of going. You know, what does that mean exactly? Well, we don't want to use the D word. What's the D word? We don't want to say that, you know, or the K word. He was killed. No, we don't want to say that. So they have the new buzzword. It's called neutralized. Yeah, I just love the language. It's called neutralized. Okay, very good. Now, we have, very interesting, there's in Netanya, when you're on the highway there, on the, 2 highway, you pass a complex. It's kind of like a world in itself. It's called the Wingate Institute. Wingate Institute. Yeah, I ever passed it? I hope so. It used to be a favorite place when I used to get vacation from prison once every so often after I was married. So the closest place to the prison would be the beach, which is a nice place, you know, second to the prison. So me and my wife would go to the Wingate and just, you know, cut down the hill and go to the beach. So there's the Wingate Institution. Now, who is Wingate? Who is Wingate? We know Watergate, but who is Wingate? Very interesting. So listen to this. Here's Wingate. There's a British general in 1936. Wingate was assigned to the British Mandate of Palestine to a staff officer position and became an intelligence officer. From his arrival, he saw the creation of a Jewish state as being a religious obligation and immediately put himself into absolute alliance with Jewish political leaders. Palestinian Arab guerrillas had at the time of his arrival begun a campaign of attacks against both British Mandate officials and Jewish communities. 1936, they're off by about 15 years, but as they say, lo nora. Interesting. Where did Mr. Wingate, where did he live? He chose to live in the kibbutz. Anyone know kibbutz? We had about 2 months ago, we had a class here about a Jewish hero in Israel. From which kibbutz? Ein Harod. Now, Wingate also lived in the kibbutz Ein Harod. which is in the area where the judge Gidon, the famous sword of Gidon, that's in that area. So that's who he mirrored himself. Anyways, this non-Jew, this Gentile, this righteous Gentile, he, in 1938, he sets up a special night squads, armed groups formed of British and Haganah volunteers. The Jewish agency helped pay salaries and other costs of the Haganah personnel. Wingate trained, commanded, and accompanied them on their patrols. The units frequently, listen closely, ambushed Arab saboteurs who attacked oil pipelines of the Iraq Petroleum Company, raiding border villages the attackers had used as bases. I don't know if they didn't have to go through like the not so Supreme Court in order to raid those supporting villages. In these raids, listen closely, Wingate's people sometimes impose severe collective punishment on the village inhabitants that were criticized by Zionist leaders as well as Wingate's British superiors. Wingate disliked the Arabs, once shouting at one of the Haganah fighters after a June 1938 attack on a village. I think you are all totally ignorant in your Ramat Yochanan, that's your training base for the Haganah, since you do not even know the elementary of using bayonets when attacking dirty Arabs. How could you put your left foot in front of your right? But his brutal tactics proved effective in quelling the uprising, and Wingate was awarded a certain award, the DSO award, in 1938. However, his deepening direct political involvement with the Zionist cause and an incident where he spoke publicly in favor of the formation of a Jewish state during his leave in Britain caused his superiors in Palestine to remove him from command. So in May 1939, he was sent back to Britain. Wingate says in one of his writings that he was astonished when he took these Jews out to fight. He was astonished at their lack of willingness to mow down and to shoot dead the Arab enemy. He was astonished. You have a Gentile here, a righteous Gentile. He cannot believe his eyes. That's what he wrote. In his memoirs, he writes that he was astonished by the fact of this unwillingness to do what had to be done. In order, you have enemies here. You have people that want to kill you. And the Jewish people are unwilling to go ahead and do that job. It was hard in order to transform them into real fighters. So look what we're surrounded by. 2,000 years of exile. So we're surrounded by defense force, not an army. In English, it's the IDF. We're surrounded by defense. We're surrounded by neutralizing. We can't use the K word, the kill. We're neutralizing people. And we have now God speaking himself. God himself says, you know what I told you in the Bible, what I told you based on the Bible, what I told you in the Talmud. You know, those that come to slay you, slay them first. Hey, no way. We can't do it. We're moral. We're better than they are. And it's really amazing. If you open up your hearts to this and think about it. When is this happening? It's all happening in the month of Adar. It's happening in the month of Adar. It's happening in the month of Adar, and we'll see What happens when there's Jewish weakness? What does Adar? Adar, we will see, is supposed to be a tikkun, fixing Jewish weakness, as we'll see. Unbelievable, beautiful Torah words, shortly see. But let me tell you, besides for God, in Hebrew, the name God is very interesting. You know, the tribe of God, that's G-A-D, not the head of the army, G-O-D, small G, thank you, Simcha. But God, when they went out to fight against the enemies of the Jewish people, they would not, they would not like take your life in the very, very most polite, most calm, most, it's not going to hurt. 1 second it's over, just like a bullet between your eyes and it's all over. Like what they call today humane. They had a special way of fighting. You always knew when the tribe of God was around, you knew it. Why? Because they would take with their arms, there's a double meaning to it. They would take their arms and they would chop off, if you're looking here, they would chop off from the shoulder area, getting the head area, the neck, and over here, ending up over here. So they would take a slice, starting from here, going down. And that's how you always knew that God was in the area. And very interesting that the Talmud teaches us that from the tribe of God, they were awarded a special mitzvah. You know what that mitzvah is? It's a mitzvah of tefillin. And you're not allowed to interrupt between putting on tefillin on your arm and putting on tefillin on your head. Where did they get that from? If you looked at those, at the martyrs, at the people that God killed, so they were in a form of, they had their heads and they also had parts of their arm. So they were rewarded for this behavior of destroying enemies of the Jewish people and putting fear into them so they would not destroy us, not kill us, So they were given this reward of tefillin, and you're not allowed to speak. Those that spoke between the tefillin of the arm and the tefillin of the head would not be allowed to go out to where? To war. God equals war. The tribe God, right? So this is a tremendous thing. The head of the army, his name, his first name is God, from the tribe of God. Look how far we've fallen. Person who's supposed to protect us. And then you have a widow. And once again, I wish her and I pray myself for her and others. But we cannot be silent. When a widow says something, she wants to say it in her own house, but when she goes public, okay, with all our sensitivity and with all our prayers, and we should see the resurrection of the dead, and Hashem should bring her tremendous nechama, consolence. Amen. But even so, when a widow whose husband was not allowed, he went up to the IDF and he was going on vacation with his wife as a kid, and he asked for a gun. And they refused to give him the gun. And the widow can come up with a statement that we rely 100% on the army. I mean, this is becoming idol worshiping here. As we talked about before, the choir that anything the army will do, they'll throw Jews out, they'll ruin Jewish lives in Gush Katif or in Northern Shomron. And we'll just sing because we're the choir. And everything is good. In the words of a certain rabbi, we can't defeat in Gush Katif, he said, we're not allowed to defeat the army. We're not allowed to defeat the army, because the army is a new type, a new form of idol worshiping. They do a lot of great things, and we have a lot of appreciation for a lot of great things that they do, and there's a lot of great people involved. But unfortunately, the direction, the people that are on the top, the people that are above, terrible. You want to put your children in a defense force, which number one is the defense, not an offense, not an army. That's where you put your children, and you cannot empty a magazine off of a teenager who's coming at you with a pair of scissors. That's who we're putting. We trust them 100%? Well, if we trust them 100%, how come they just changed that law? I mean, if they were 100% okay, kosher, 2 days ago, what all of a sudden, why did they change the law if they're 100%? I thought we rely on Hashem. I thought we say in our prayers in the morning, Al tiftechu bin divim b'ven adam she'ein lo teshua. Don't rely on people. From them will come no salvation. I don't understand. The same army that stood by when they signed agreements of the Oslo, and they agreed to leave the Arab cities, and 1,500 Jews are no longer here. An army that agreed and did not stand up, except for a few, did not stand up and say, listen, we're not willing to support this action. When they left Gaza, and from Gaza, all these wars that we're suffering now, and all the attacks on cities in Tel Aviv, and Rishon LeZion, and Haifa, in all these areas, 100%? You rely 100%? It's becoming mamish, a form of idol worshipping here. When you do good things, you do good things. But let's not turn it into an idol worshipping here. And they have a carte blanche for anything that they want to do. If your job is to defend Jews, then why the hell are so many Jews afraid? Why the hell are Jews afraid to come to Jerusalem? Why are Jews afraid to travel? Why are Jews hiding behind cement blocks in bus stops? Why are people cutting back on their traveling? Why are people afraid to go to the old city, the most holiest place in the world? Well, if your job is defense, maybe you better turn in your badge and give it to somebody else. If that's your job.
Rabbi, can I say that there's something the viewers out in TV land should maybe Google this. There's something called payola in the U.S., so I'll just leave it at that word. Search payola. And I think that a lot of these young widows are being paid off to make statements and to say certain things. I mean, of course, they're young and they're worried about their future and their children. So I think it's despicable what the government puts them in a position where they lose their breadwinner, they lose their husband, they lose their defender, and then they're, probably offered certain guarantees to make certain statements.
Okay, after that's been said and done, Purim Katan, right? Today, Shushan Purim Katan. What's it all about? An amazing thing. We spoke here, if I'm not mistaken, we spoke here 2 or 3 weeks ago about a concept, how in Judaism stands, so to speak, on 2 legs. When we have Jewish holidays, what are we celebrating? We are celebrating a twofold idea. We are celebrating the salvation of the Jewish people, but we are also celebrating the downfall of our enemies. Because our enemies are not necessarily our personal enemies, but they are enemies of God. Because when you fight against the Jewish people, you're fighting against God. So that's what we spoke about. We went into various holidays. So amazing, Hashem sent me these words of Torah. There are 2 every 3 years approximately, there's a leap year. And we add one more Adar. So there becomes 2 Adars every 3 years approximately. Now we said today's a holiday. Today's a holiday. Where I'm from in my yeshiva, the rabbi invited the whole yeshiva to his house, and they had a gigantic Sudat Mitzvah, they had a gigantic meal and festivities, and they had the l'chaim, and they drank wine. And they didn't pull this out of a hat. There are laws pertaining to the celebration. There's a celebration. This is a very important time. So what's behind, if there's 2 months of Purim, so to speak? Because once we Mishenichnas Adar Marbim Simcha, once you enter the month of Adar, you're supposed to be in tremendous happiness. That holds true for both Adars. But I don't get it. If the main hitter, if the main Purim is in the second Adar, so what are we making any mention of the, of the first Adar? Why are we making a big deal? Why was our prayers changed today? There were a lot of things that we didn't say. There was a lot of prayers that we didn't say. Why is that? So let's look into a few ideas here. So the ideas that we'll see here is that every Adar represents a certain aspect of the holiday. So there's a reason why that even in the first Adar, even though we're not celebrating Purim per se, the mitzvah of simcha, of happiness, and various laws pertaining to what do you do on this day pertain. We'll see why. Okay. In the Shem Mishmuel, on the portion of the week of Tetzaveh, which was last week's Parsha, on page 163, he says the following idea. Now this is really important to, open up our ears here, because this is a really important idea which we're going to talk about, God willing, in a few weeks from now. But just remember, as we said, you heard it here first. So the Shem Mishmuel writes the following in his book. On Purim, we see that there are basically 2 types of commandments. There's the Megillah reading, and then there's the festivities. The festivities include a person's meal, and includes also giving portions, giving food, drink out to family, to friends, people, neighbors, etc. That's a different part. Okay, there's 2 parts of Purim, to the holiday. Now, Shem Mishmuel writes the following. Kriyat Megillah, we know from the Talmud. Talmud tells us, what is the reading of the Megillah equated to? It's equated to Hallel. When we sing on holidays, there's a Hallel, which is a praise, praising God. Okay? Now, he says something very interesting. Hallel is something. The Hallel prayers that we say on holidays or the first day of the month, on Rosh Chodesh, it has nothing to do, per se, with the downfall of our enemies. And he brings proof to this. Number 1, it says in the tractate of Psachim, on 117, side B, it says, when do we say Hallel? When do we say these special paragraphs of Psalms that King David said? When do we say it? Here's the words of the Talmud. That the prophets told us, the prophets amongst us, have given us the law that whenever a person, could be a private person, doesn't have to be the community, doesn't have to be the nation of Israel, whenever there's some kind of bad situation that you were involved in, and afterwards, when we're redeemed from this bad situation, you're supposed to say Hallel. People are in a lot of different types of bad situations that have nothing to do with Gentiles or the enemies of the Jewish people. It's just a bad situation. A person's in a bad situation. There's a million different types of bad situations. And therefore, the Shem Mishmuel says, we see that many times the Jewish people would say Hallel when there was a drought, and all of a sudden it began to rain. The drought was broken. Nothing to do with the downfall of the enemies of the Jewish people. Not only that, we see that there are holidays. For example, Shavuot. Why are we saying Hallel? Rosh Chodesh. Why are we saying Hallel? Were the Jewish people in some dire strait and we were saved on the first day of the month? Nothing to do with it. So sometimes we say the Hallel, the praise, because of the fact that we were in dire straits and Hashem saved us. Nothing to do with Gentiles or downfall. And also we have a different reason why we say Hallel when there is an additional holiness in certain times of the year. So every Rosh Chodesh, a person dons nice clothes. Why is that? A person eats a festive meal. Why is that? Why are there special prayers? Because of the fact that this is a very, very spiritual, uplifting day, more than the average day. So therefore, we say the Hallel prayers to acknowledge this additional spiritual uplifting that we have. Now, this is really important. Why? We're not going to get into it right now, but I'm just going to put in parentheses. There is a certain opinion in Halacha that the reason why we don't say on the last day of Passover, why we don't say a complete Hallel, is because of the fact that the Egyptians drowned on the 7th day of Passover in the sea. Now, according to what the Shem Mishmuel is saying, and he's quoting, these aren't his own ideas, he's quoting here sources of the Talmud. There's nothing to do. The reason why we don't say Hallel, a full Hallel, on Pesach, on Passover, the last day, has nothing to do with the fact that the Egyptians drowned or didn't drown, according to what we're saying here. So there must be, according to this, there must be a different reason why we don't say a complete Hallel on the 6 days of Passover. Just on the first day of Passover, we say a full Hallel. It must be a different reason. Because we just proved here, it's nothing to do with the downfall of the enemies. So listen here. So the Shem Mishmuel says, 1, we have the reading of the Megillah. The reading of the Megillah is connected to the saving of the Jewish people. We thank God for saving the Jewish people. How do we do it? How do we do it? On Purim, not by saying Hallel, because it was a holiday that happened outside the land of Israel and not inside the land of Israel. So we don't say Hallel, but we say something else. We read the Megillah. We read the story of Esther. This is connected to the celebration of the Jewish people. We're celebrating that God saved us, period. One part of the day. There's a second part of the day. Second part of the day is we get together and with friends and families, etc., neighbors, and we have this tremendous, tremendous festive meal, and we drink and we sing and we give over Torah ideas. The Shem Mishmuel writes, this is connected to celebrating the vengeance that was done against our enemies. So the Shem Mishmuel says there are two reasons why we celebrate. There are two reasons why we celebrate Purim. One of the reasons has nothing to do with the downfall of the enemy. Just the fact that the Jewish people were saved. Thank you, God. And there's a second reason we celebrate. Has nothing to do with the Savior of the Jewish people. The fact that vengeance was done against enemies of the Jewish people, that's a reason to celebrate. Disregarding the Jewish people. Your enemies fell, you know, what was that army we talked about? Oh, the the Royal Bahama Defense Force happened to blow them away, celebrate, 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 dance to the music. Okay, so listen closely, folks. There's a Gemara in Megillah, page 6, side 2. There's a dispute between two scholars. One is Rabbi Elazar, and the other one is Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. What's the dispute on? When there are 2 months of Adar, where do we stick the major league Purim? Not the small one like today. Where do we stick the big one? So there's 2 opinions. Rabbi Elazar says the following. He says you have to put it close to the month of Shvat. Once Shvat kicks in, then you have to, the first Adar, which is the closest to Shvat, that's when you have the Purim celebration. According to Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, no. You have to connect the Purim celebration with the celebration of Passover. So therefore, make it in the second Adar, which is close to the month of Nisan. What's going on here? What's behind closed doors? What's behind this dispute? Check out this beautiful Torah. The Shem Shmuel writes, it says in the Torah that God gave out months, which means control, to Jacob, where the Jewish people are in control, and God gave out months to Esav, where the Gentiles are in control. 2 of those months happen to be Tevet and Shvat, but not all of Shvat, half of Shvat. When we get to Tu B'Shvat, right, the day of the planting, the day of the, what they call today, we plant trees, etc., Tu B'Shvat. So he received 2 months, Esav. The enemies of the Jewish people received 2 months. This time, they also received other months, but for right now, we're talking about this time of year. So they received really 1.5 month of control. So the Shem Shmuel gives a beautiful Torah. According to Rabbi Elazar, when do you have to put in? When do you have to put the major Purim in? You have to put on the first. Why? It has to be close to the month of Shvat. According to that opinion, the Shem Shmuel says, what's behind it? That the majority celebration of Purim, it should be concentrated on the fact that the Jewish enemies fell. Once again, why? Because who received the month of Shvat? Esav. It's in the control of the enemies. So if the enemies fall during Purim, you want to put it as close as possible to the fall of Esav. So therefore, according to Rabbi Elazar, that's why you have to have the major Purim when a leap year comes out and the first. Because we want to concentrate mostly on the fall of our enemies. Amazing statement. Now, Rav Shimon ben Gamliel says, no. We concentrate on the salvation of the Jewish people. If you want to concentrate on the salvation of the Jewish people, well then, you don't want to have it close to the month of Shvat, which symbolizes the downfall of the nations of Esav, who was once in control, but in Purim, he lost control. So we're saying, just like in Purim, you lost control here also. Rav Shimon ben Gamliel says, if you really look at Passover, the only reason why there was a need to smack up the enemies of the Jewish people was that there was no choice, because they refused to let the Jewish people go. Why were they drowned in the sea? Because they were coming after the Jewish people. There was no choice. The Shem Shmuel gives an unbelievable explanation here. That really, if the Egyptians would have been well behaved, there was no need for them to be smacked around by God in all these plagues. So really Passover represents the salvation of the Jewish people. Just the salvation of the Jewish people. The fact that the Egyptians were killed, etc., that's just because of their stubbornness. But that's not really part of the holiday. So that's why, according to Rav Shimon ben Gamliel, we want to put two birds of the same feather together. What are those two birds of the same feather? That's the month of the second Adar, which will have Purim, the main Purim on the second of Adar, which will be close to the month of Nisan, because these two are connected. So folks, just to sum it up, we have Purim is a twofold holiday. On one hand, we're celebrating the salvation of the Jewish people. On the other hand, we're also celebrating the downfall of the enemies. Therefore, that's why we have two Adars. And that's why both of them are very, very spiritual times of the year. And that's why many people, that's why the laws, there's many laws that pertain to the first, okay, for the first Adar as well as the second Adar. And that's why once we become into the month of Adar, even though it's only the first of Adar, we're still commanded to put the pedal to the metal when it comes to being happy. Also in the first month of Adar. So we see here a beautiful, what we talked about a couple of weeks ago, tremendous Torah here. Now, on the same wave, there in another book, it's called the Rebbe called Rav David Sokotchov. He writes in his book Neo Deshe on the subject of Purim Katan. He brings down the same kind of concept that Purim is a twofold time of the year. There's two aspects to Purim. Number one is we receive the Torah again. But this time, unlike in Mount Sinai, when God shoved it down our throats and he pulled up that mountain and said, you want it? If not, man, this is finished. Finita la commedia for you. This time the Jewish people received the Torah, but in happiness. So one part of Purim is receiving the Torah. Now therefore, according to this opinion, when should we have the major celebration of Purim? Of course, in the month of Shvat. Why? Because we read in the Torah, in the book of Deuteronomy, it says the following, that Moshe Rabbeinu on the first day of Shvat, Moshe Rabbeinu gives over the last book of the Torah during 36 days till the 7th of Adar. Moshe Rabbeinu is giving over the Torah to the Jewish people. So a month that represents Torah more than any other month is the month of Shvat. So according to this opinion, the major holiday of Purim should be celebrated on the first month of Adar. The first Adar. Why? Because it's close to the month of Shvat. Shvat represents the receiving of the Torah by the Jewish people given by Moses. But on the other hand, there's a second part. There's a second part of Purim that happens. That happens to be the salvation of the Jewish people. The Jewish people were saved. The Jewish people were saved, then you want to connect it to the month of Nisan, where the Jewish people were saved from the Egyptians. So once again, the same kind of dispute, but different aspects of the day. So we have the Torah aspect of the day, which more fits into the first Adar, and we have the second Adar, which more fits into the celebrations of the meal, festive, the Jewish people celebrating being saved from the evil Persians. So anyways, that's a little bit on one foot. By the way, just one thing that I want to throw in here that I forgot. The Shem Shmuel, when we talk about celebrating via food, what does food have to do with celebrating? Why can't we celebrate Why can't we just celebrate the downfall of the enemies without food? Maybe we'll dance, sing along, So he says something very interesting. He brings a proof that when Abraham went out to save his nephew Lot, so he went out and he battled the 4 kings that had beaten the 5 kings. And when he finishes the battle, the Torah tells us something very interesting. A person named Melchizedek comes out with what? Food and wine. So the Shem Shmuel says, why was he bringing food and wine? Because the way that we celebrate the downfall of the enemies is via the meal. We said in the beginning, the meal represents celebrating the part of Purim, which is celebrating the downfall of the enemy. So we learn it out from Melchizedek, who brought Abraham after he finished off the 4 kings, after he just blew them away. So he brings out a festive meal in order to celebrate the downfall of the 4 kings. Okay, next part. Listen closely. We talked about how ironic it is that all this poison is coming out in the month, what the chief of staff is talking about and his choir, and all this garbage, all this pollution, all this pollution of Judaism. It's all coming out, and during this month, we said there's a reason. It's an amazing thing. How did we get into the situation of Purim? How did we get there? What went wrong that the Jewish people were under a decree to be destroyed? To be destroyed. What did we do wrong? If we understand what we did wrong, we'll see the connection, that it's ironic. It's really ironic that these statements are coming out in this month. So listen. In this holy book called Esther Rabbah, which goes into the what's going on behind the scenes of the Megillah. There's, at the beginning, it's called Ptichta. It's called the opening. And there's a question that's posed by the rabbis. Give me a line, give me a verse that really summarizes the first word of the Megillah, which is Vayehi. Vai, the rabbis tell us, Vai is, oh my God, this is terrible. How did we get into this terrible situation? So what's the verse? Rab Levi says, this is Ptichta, the beginning of Esther Rabbah, the beginning, it's called Ptichta, and it's on the 7th paragraph. Rav Levi writes that if you really want to understand how we got into this mess, I'll tell you, baby. He brings in a verse that says in the end of Numbers, it says there that if you do not eliminate the enemies out of the land of Israel, those that you have left, either by chasing them out if they're willing to, or by force, or by killing them off in wars, if you do not chase them out, if you do not destroy them, what you have left in the land, they will come and destroy you. They will be like thorns in your side. Where do they bring that proof from? From King Saul. King Saul, we have to understand the greatness of King Saul. King Saul was a person he was a rare person. So whenever we're talking about the great forefathers and mothers, we have to understand we're using a microscope here. Okay? We're using a microscope, and we're very careful, and we understand who we're dealing with. We're not dealing with people on our level, God forbid. We're dealing with great people, with saints, so to speak, pardon the language. But tremendous people. So King Saul was one of those tremendous souls. But everyone makes a mistake. It says that, but King Solomon said, Ein tzaddik ba'aretz asher yaseh tov v'lo yichta. There is no righteous person that is not fallen. The falling of our forefathers if it teaches us not to fall like they did. So this actually is a tremendous tikkun for them. It's a compliment for them. It brings them up spiritually in whatever high worlds they are into. Okay, so we see that because of the fact that Saul had mercy, remember, 13-year-old or 14-year-old, you have to check out how, how big the scissors is. Chazon Ish, remember, Grach Naeh. You have to make sure you know the person's age. You have to make sure that it's not really Bruce Jenner in disguise. Caitlin, is that correct? Caitlin, yeah. Okay. So the reason why that, how does Haman come into the world? He comes into the world by the fact that King Saul had mercy on the king of Amalek, Agag, and he didn't kill him. And that night he had relations, and from that relations came the lineage of Haman years later. So we see an amazing Torah. In this month of Adar, we haven't learned any lesson. We're still the defense force, not the offense. We're still neutralizing. We're not killing. We're still not on the level of Wingate. We haven't reached the pedestal of Wingate.
Yeah, but we forgot what came after Shaul. David.
So folks, but there's a second connection. There's a second connection. Jacob meets up with his brother Esav. Esav, of course, the father of Amalek. Amalek, Haman, came to destroy the Jewish people. So Jacob hasn't seen his brother for 22 years. He's meeting up with him, and it says that he was very fearful. And he calls out to Hashem, Hatzileni na miyad, save me from the hand. Chazal point out, Balaturim and others, if you take the first letter, the acronym of those three words, Hatzileni na miyad, Hey, Nun, Mem, what does that spell out? Haman. Yaakov sees in the future. He's a prophet. He sees in the future. What's facing him right now could be, this is the continuation, it's going to be in the days of Haman. And he cries out, Hashem, save me! Save me from who? Save me from my brother. That's Esav. But also, save me from Haman. Jacob goes and he bows down 7 times to his brother Esav. He bows down 7 times. In the book Midrash HaGadol, on the portion of the week of Vayishlach, it says there that because of the fact that Jacob bowed down 7 times, 7 holy places of the Jewish people will be destroyed. 2 temples, Shiloh, tabernacle, Nov, tabernacle, Gilgal, tabernacle, 7. 1 second. That rings a bell. In the end of the portion of the week of Vayera, Abraham makes a covenant, something that the rabbis say that he shouldn't have done, something that we paid for dearly. He makes a covenant with the king of the Plishtim, Avimelech. He brings in 7 sheep. Chazal, the rabbis tell us, 7, Jacob 7, Abraham 7. he says, because of the fact that you made this covenant, which was a covenant not to take over the land of Israel, 7 righteous people will be killed by the Plishtim, and 7 tabernacles, 7 holy places of the Jewish people will be destroyed. Mordechai, it says in the Arizal and other books, Mordechai was the reincarnation of Jacob. And that's why Mordechai does not bow down, because he knows that he has to rectify what was done in the time of Jacob. Now, we'll have, God willing, a special class on Jacob, why he did. We'll see a totally different angle on this. But there is an angle